Welcome to our second Lunch and Learn, everyone. As folks continue to join in, I just wanted to briefly go over some housekeeping notes before we begin. So firstly, welcome back to Mentorly. This is a new platform that we have been using for the Lunch and Learns thus far. So just a few things to be mindful of on the platform. If you do need captions or translation to another language like French, you can click on the three dots at the bottom of your screen and select subtitles at the top. We are also dropping instructions for captions and translation into the chat and have sent them via email for reference. For those speaking today, please remember to enunciate clearly. And lastly, the chat box is located in the upper right corner of your screen, and it is a living resource, so you can check it out even after the meeting has ended today. So for the folks who have just joined, again, welcome to our second Lunch and Learn. We're going to dive in and get started right away. So my name is Rachel. I am the Social Impact Program Manager over here at Startup Canada. Our many thanks to CCEDNet as well for helping to organize this session today. So Startup Canada and CCEDNet have heard from many IRP partners that they are interested in learning more about IRP projects. So our goal with this initiative is really to create a space to learn more about each other's work and actively think about collaboration. So each month, 2 IRP partners will present more on their projects or present a specific theme that they want to discuss with the IRP partners. Prior to starting off, I want to recognize that I am situated on Indigenous land. Many of you are located on different lands than myself, and I acknowledge those First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, including the ongoing struggles in the face of colonialism, complicated relationships, and actions required moving forward in true reconciliation. So I am located in Toronto, the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And this area is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. But wherever we are in Canada, we can root ourselves in a deeper understanding of what comes before us and who traditionally stewards the land and the waters where we live. So again, for everyone joining today, please feel free to post your questions in the chat as we go along, or you can save them until the end of the session, and we will move from one presentation to the next and leave room at the end for questions. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker today. So kicking off our Lunch and Learn will be Tate from EntrepreNorth. EntrepreNorth is a project initiative that offers programming to empower Indigenous and community-based entrepreneurs to build sustainable businesses and livelihoods across Northern Canada. So with that, Tate, I will hand it over to you.
Well, thanks so much. Just want to make sure that everyone can see the slides here and I can get started pretty quick. Hi everyone, my name is Tate Juniper. It's a pleasure to be presenting today on the work we're doing here at EntrepreNorth. I'd like to thank the partners at CCEDNet and Startup for hosting the event, and excited to see Ryan at Afro-Caribbean Business Network to do his after mine. I'm Satu Dene, the Great Bear Lake people. I'm the Impact Fund Catalyst here at EntrepreNorth, and I've been charged with designing and implementing EntrepreNorth's Northern Impact Fund. It's exciting, necessary work, but from what I've learned in the last 6 months of being here, it's also steeped in a lot of complexity, nuance, and a lot of deep thinking to make sure we can get this impact fund right for Northern people. So I'd like to start off with acknowledgements here. Before we begin, EntrepreNorth's team and office are located on Chief Dry Geese territory. These are and have been the traditional lands of Yellowknives Dene for time immemorial. I'd also allow you some time to internally acknowledge the lands in which you reside and reflect on the people, the tradition, and the deep time that exists in these spaces. For our work here at EntrepreNorth, we've witnessed Northern entrepreneurs struggle to raise capital to support the growth of their businesses and impacts. There's an ideological disconnect between funding opportunities available and the needs of Indigenous entrepreneurs and social innovators at various stages of business development. We believe here at the team there's an opportunity to reimagine the way capital is offered and for entrepreneurs that better reflects Indigenous commonalities, values, and ways of life, and to support them to create positive change within their own communities. Northern needs are different, and that's kind of a bold statement, but from my lived experience growing up the land and being in communities my whole life up here, I wasn't really surprised when I began to work on our impact funds, and I realized that there is a big gap that exists in the social finance space in the North. Some of my early work here actually was mostly just other organizations and impact reports being about EntrepreNorth and the work we're going to be doing. And it really kind of showed that there is a huge gap. There are no social finance funds that are currently being run in the North. And a lot of people have been pointing towards us for a while now for the work that we're doing. There's kind of an innate complexity when it comes to trying to explain what Northern Indigenous people need, while understanding that that kind of misrepresentation of those needs has been one of the main issues in the current financial and social ecosystems. The work we're doing right now with the IRP and on our own team is going back to centering the needs and the perspectives of those people kind of from the ground up. Our work with the IRP is going to be helping ensure the social impact and social finance systems reflect those needs and those perspectives, and working alongside Northern stakeholders, entrepreneurs, and communities to really center those needs. The outputs for our projects are design thinking workshops. We've done one on the land so far back in the fall, and we'll be hosting a virtual one upcoming here, where we bring together community members, entrepreneurs, and people who have a vested interest in doing good for the North, and their perspectives need to be shared. In these sessions, we sit together and we really try to kind of put together the commonalities that we see while moving away and trying to shift away from the pan-Indigenous thinking that has kind of clouded a lot of the judgment around what the Northern needs have been so far. We'll also be releasing our reports on what we see as Northern Indigenous needs for access to capital, and creating a methodology paper to define what Northern Indigenous impact metrics and measurements should look like there. But about the team itself, EntrepreNorth is a project on Makeway shared platform that's focused on empowering Indigenous entrepreneurs to build sustainable businesses and livelihoods across the North. We believe Northern Indigenous entrepreneurs can be catalysts of prosperity and drivers of social change within their own communities, and much of our work supports them on that pathway. I've included our vision, our purpose, and it's our mission statement. I missed that one on the last there. But our team here, Benjamin Scott and Dina Cohen are our co-directors. Tammy Oliver Snook is our program lead. I am the Impact Fund Catalyst. We also have Tanya Roach, our marketing specialist. And our two elders and residents who help guide and inform our opinions are Paul Andrew and Shirley Adamson. And we have Brad Coulter, who is our entrepreneur in residence, who kind of gives us a perspective on the needs of entrepreneurs as we go along our journey here. Our team at EntrepreNorth is growing, and the work we're doing also is. We offer a lot of things here, and we're hoping to expand our programming and our offerings as time goes on. Our business ideation workshops are a series of virtual and in-person workshops that are in partnerships with Indigenous governments, organizations, and communities across the North. Our growth program delivers a wraparound business education and support for Indigenous and community-based entrepreneurs wanting to grow and launch a business. Those cohort members, we usually have a different model. Right now, we have a digital model where we're working with digital creators. In the past, we've had food cohorts, and we've had on the land cohorts as well. These members also participate in creating impact videos that highlight and promote their businesses and helps us all celebrate their successes. We have the original podcast, Venture Outs, which also platforms a lot of different perspectives and voices across the North. And all of our curriculum is based off of a Indigenous-centered model delivered by our team, and also designated trainers that go through our trainer program, which is focused on teaching Indigenous facilitators how to deliver culturally relevant programming in the North. Benjamin Scott, who's joined us here today, is the project director, and he's also leading the development on a couple different models, the multi-directional business compass and the 4 directions of change theory. They serve as the foundation for our program design, and they offer a really powerful tool for thinking about business, community, and like economic impact in a more holistic and understandable way. As we go through this work here, the 4 directions of change is what we're kind of centering a lot of the impact fund on, and that's the Western area, which is economic reconciliation and inclusion, and equitable finance. So As an Indigenous organization, we recognize the importance of building a culture of innovation that is rooted in knowledge and also building Northern capacity that can build business education and mentorship in a restorative and healing way. Our impact fund is aligned with these goals, and we're really hoping that the work that we do through the research with the IRP and the work that we do through our own Four Directions impact model can make a big change in the North and do some good for everyone. But about the work we've done so far, I just want to get into a little bit of the learnings we've kind of gone through with not only our first gathering in the fall time there, but some of the research that I've done going through a lot of different reporting systems, papers, and as I've noticed, there is quite a big gap in reporting in the North. We have some things like CANOR and other economic development, but for the most part, a lot of social innovation, social finance, and impact measurements are provincial based or Canada wide based with small sections on the North because there's been either a lack of understanding on what the needs are up here or just kind of a lack of being able to communicate clearly and find ways to I guess like communicate to different communities and not make sure that you're trying to represent everyone as one, which has been an issue in the past. For our fund design, we've kind of seen the need to put different streams of funding in place. There's a lot of different people in the North who have different business needs and wants. We've seen that we need to have capital that is patient, is given at different tiers of funding, whether you're an entrepreneur starting off with the ideation phase, somebody who's in the startup phase, or somebody who's had a bit more traction in the market, but you just need a infusion of capital to get going there. We've also seen the need for flexible capital. A lot of loan programs and grants right now have kind of sticky metrics. For example, people in the North who want to do something like a wood cutting business or be on the land, some funding doesn't allow them to use some of the purchases like boats or snowmobiles for recreational purposes, but you're going to need to use those things in your day-to-day life because there's a lot of a merger in the way that people conduct business up here that is tied to their land, harvesting, going out with your family, and all these things don't really allow people to make the purchases they need to support their business well-being if they have to have their boat that they use purely for business operations just sitting there, right? It's not really economically feasible for a lot of people to go through the funding streams that don't actually have an impact on their personal lives as well. A lot of funds and loans also have unclear language around the terms, and people aren't really sure on the reporting process because it's something that the capability or the capacity in the North hasn't really gone over too much with a lot of people. And the same thing with the transparency of terms. If people aren't really understanding what they're accepting when they get a loan or a grant or other streams of funding, it can be very stressful and kind of make people shy away from wanting to access capital in the future or even understanding how to access it in the first place. Across Canada, and especially in the North, there's also a lot of risk aversion when it comes to lending and loaning to Indigenous people. I think that we need to start thinking about these things in a belief-based way first, which is believing in Indigenous success rather than trying to analyze the risks of loaning to people. I also think that things like a credit score and other systems of underwriting have been inherently issues that Indigenous people have faced in the North. And alongside that, being able to advance capability and help people understand how to repay a loan and how to work through like the systems for reporting is really important because people might be able to access grants, but that's not really helping sustainable long-term success as well. We're also seeing things like the impact metrics of aligning things if we're going to be doing this in the charitable world as well, right? As I've listed here, there are many different governing bodies of First Nations groups in the three territories of the Northwest Territories, the Yukon, and Nunavut. And there's a lot of different things that these people need for their communities. There's also the alignment of like economic development, the Government of Canada, the government of the Northwest Territories. So there's a lot of different metrics of impact in the North, and it's hard to find those commonalities sometimes. But it's important that we do, and it's important that we work with these communities in any way we can. And I think the first thing that comes up is, that's a lot of communities to work with. That's a lot of different people that you have to find ways to align with. But I think that that's just the process that needs to happen. With that comes building a more diverse framework, I guess. And part of that is understanding that if you have a lot of different impact goals, Common Approach has a really great flexible standard for that, which is their construct system, which is a lot of the research we've been doing as well, which is, I always say you build the 10 frame, not the tents. And if we can build underneath these many different nations and groups, we can give them constructs or foundational impact metrics that they can work off of and build what their community needs, build what they need on top of that. It's part of a process of being able to partner with creating impact rather than giving people specific metrics and boxes that they need to fit in, which has been done historically and hasn't really worked in the North. But with all that said, this is still part of advocating for change, but we still need to work within the current systems that exist, which means that with investors and stakeholders, we need to be able to show that the impact metrics that we either hope to achieve in the future or we want to implement now still have tangible outcomes, and people can still make investments in this, because we have to, if we want to shift the finance system in the North, we have to prove that it's able to be shifted, and it's not just a leap of faith for people in the finance system. It's going to be a gradual shift that might take some more time, but it is something we're committed to. So with our work here, we're continuing to design and research and build this fund here. We're hosting our second virtual design thinking workshop in the spring here. We'll be engaging with more stakeholders and entrepreneurs. Beyond that, we'll be reaching out to communities and other stakeholders in the North to survey and hear back what they need and figure out exactly how we can serve different communities by engaging with those communities. Our reporting and paper writing will also be wrapping up at the end of our first year of funding here through the IRP streams, and we're really looking forward to being able to sharing the reports and the methodology paper when those are done. In terms of working in the IRP network, I think for us, we'd love to collaborate with any partners who are working in the impact fund space, and also ones who have looked at different impact frameworks that are more flexible and understand that, the metrics that might be used for systems right now are a bit too constricted. And we're hoping to be able to partner with anyone who has experience working with Indigenous frameworks and other frameworks that have, I guess, more of a flexible approach. So that's a little bit of our work so far. Appreciate you all, Cho, and thank you for listening today.
Thank you very much, Tate. A lot of really interesting work happening up at EntrepreNorth and a lot of interesting insights from your first design thinking workshop. So thank you very much for sharing with us.
No problem.
So our next speaker today is Ryan from the African Caribbean Business Network. The Afro-Caribbean Business Network was created to provide resources for Black business owners to build sustainable and successful businesses. So with that, Ryan, I will turn it over to you.
I'm so happy to be here. My name is Ryan Knight, one of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. Let me just full screen this. And again, we've been in existence for about 5 years. So we celebrated our 5-year anniversary in December that just passed. And a little bit about myself, I do consider myself a serial social entrepreneur. I run a social enterprise called Detailing Nights, which provides mobile waterless car cleaning. And we work with youth in the community that join our youth entrepreneurship program. And it's actually starting up recruitment. So if you know somebody in high school that's having trouble finding a summer job, definitely send them my way so we can show them they have the potential to start their own business and be an entrepreneur. I'm also the founder of Service Kingdom, which is a social enterprise consultancy firm, Executives Power Up, which helps for-profit companies create that executive team to help them scale up. And one secret project that I guess is not so secret anymore is that we're working on Black Panther's Cage. So think of Dragon's Den, but with Black founders and the Black panel of judges and VCs, angel investors investing in them. But all that to say, really proud to be here representing the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. As I mentioned, I'm the co-founder and now the co-executive director. And really, 5 years ago, there was a gap that I was seeing as an entrepreneur myself, running Detail Ignites, and noticing that the youth graduating our program didn't have Black-focused business organizations to plug into to be able to continue their journeys. And also for myself, we were looking to franchise and expand across Canada and into the US. And there weren't a lot of Black-focused business organizations that had the mandate to really help companies scale up in our community. So we brought 6 other entrepreneurs together. We said, could we create this entity that would be able to sit down with an entrepreneur, figure out what stage that they're in, and then help them create a strategy to grow their companies exponentially. And of course, we didn't just do it all on our own. I always like to shout out our partners, whether it be Calabash, a cooperative of expert service providers in our community, Alterna Savings that has been a pillar of support for our organization from the beginning. Shout out to Susan Henry, the Director of Community Investments at Alterna, and all the way down to an organization like Toronto Community Benefits Network, where Rosemary Powell has been doing great work in the community to put in place community benefits agreements. And she's been a supporter of not just ACBN, but also Detail Ignites. And Setsi, who's another IRP partner, and Sheridan College's Edge, who allows us to be the bridge between the educational institution and the community. So really, we exist to see the community win, whether you're an entrepreneur or an executive director, so that you're able to grow your enterprise. And some of the pillars that we do stand on, of course, I think I should actually change the pillar of entrepreneurship to more the foundation of what we do. Everything rests on the tool of entrepreneurship because it's such a powerful tool to use to empower a community to create economic inclusion and use it as something that can really battle test somebody. When I talk to our students that go through our program, and as they're learning about entrepreneurship, I let them know that they are now elevating themselves above their graduating class, because everybody's going to have that piece of paper, but not everybody has been in the battlefield to understand what business is, and that's what a summer of running a company looks like. But all that to say, one thing that we really lean into is that access to funding for our entrepreneurs. Because of our relationship with Alterna Savings, and thanks to a donation from the Inspirit Foundation, we were able to set up our own microloan program. So we loan up to $25,000 to entrepreneurs. And thanks to the federal government through the Black Entrepreneurship Program, we created an accelerator to get entrepreneurs investment ready so that they can get that injection of 50 to 250,000 from angel investors or pre-seed rounds with VCs. So over the 5 years, we have been able to engage with over 5,000 Black entrepreneurs, I would say concentrated in the Peel area and the GTA, so Toronto and Mississauga, Brampton area. But thanks to the research that we've been doing, we've noticed that there's about 130,000 Black entrepreneurs across Canada that are under the radar. You'll notice that only 27,000 are registered. So the other 100,000+ are really operating businesses from their Instagram accounts or in their basement, really under the radar, under the table, I guess you could call it. So being able to reach the entrepreneurs that aren't registered but do need the support so that we can help them grow as well. And one thing that I truly, I'm most proud of is our ability to partner with other organizations. Now we have formed partnerships with over 40+ Black focused business organizations so that we're able to reach a broader base of entrepreneurs and be able to support them. So no matter where an entrepreneur comes from, what stage they're in, we're able to point them in the right direction. So I wanted to share with you some exciting research that we have been able to complete thanks to the research firm Dunn, Pierre and Barnett, one of the few Black-focused research or Black-owned research firms in Canada. But typically they're doing a lot of research outside of Canada and in the Caribbean and overseas, doing labor market assessments for countries. So we encourage them that, hey, Canada has not done a Black labor market assessment. So we're able to commission their services to do one of the first Black labor market assessments and concentrated in Southern Ontario to start but we are looking to expand it and grow it across Canada. And thanks to our partners at CCEDNet and the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem. So to give you a bit of an overview on the research, we were able to interview and survey almost 1,600 Black entrepreneurs in Southern Ontario. And this ranged from focus groups to calling a lot of people, sending out surveys, and doing, I'd say, one-on-one interviews as well, but also leaning on a lot of the statistics from StatsCan, interviews with organizations such as FACE and the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, to really get a well-rounded view of what entrepreneurs are facing and where their employment gaps are and how they want to grow their companies. Because, and this is just a quick overview of the areas in Southern Ontario that we did focus on. Again, Toronto and Peel were the majority, and Durham as well. But one key data point that came out of it is now what size are these companies that are in our community? So out of the 1,600, there's about 86% that are only 1 to 4 employees. And this made us really pause, because when we're dealing with the banking system and getting capital and how Canada views small business, that ranges between 1 employee up to 49. But when you go to a bank and they're treating you with that same segment of 1 to 49, and we know that a business that has 2 to 3 employees or as a solopreneur is a lot different than a business that has 40 employees. So this is starting to shed light on why it's difficult to obtain capital through those traditional means, because typically a bank would see a smaller business as higher risk and not want to lend, because no matter what you call these Black entrepreneur programs, it all comes down to that underwriter at the bank. So if you can't get through the underwriter by showing them that you're not as risky as you might look on paper, most of these loans are getting declined. And we're seeing that with some of these Black entrepreneur programs. And an idea of how much employment is generated from these businesses, you notice they're employing over 5,000. So we're able to allow a business to graduate into tiers. So going from a solopreneur to 5 employees to 10 employees plus, and actually being a small business. Right now, if you have 1 to 4 on the international stage, you're actually considered a nano business. So creating more segments that understand the different challenges that an entrepreneur is going to have when they have less than 5 employees, when they have around 10, and when they have more than 10 has been ideal. But this is where the focus groups that we were doing showed us how difficult it's been with businesses struggling to find talent. And one thing that came out that really made me step back and analyze what we're doing is in the focus groups, whether it's an unemployed individual outside of the Black community or within the Black community, 50% of them said they were less than likely to want to work at a Black firm. And so when we looked at a Black unemployed person not wanting to work at a Black firm, that really made us ask why. And some of the responses that we were getting was, we're not sure if we're going to get paid on time. Sometimes because they don't have benefits or they don't have employee perks. These are all things that make it desirable to work at a firm. Yet the stereotype of Black firms is that they don't have these things. And now the data is proving it, because if majority of our businesses are between 1 to 4 employees, typically they don't have robust payroll systems. So your check might be late some weeks. And so we now, as organizations, as the Afro-Caribbean Business Network, we're charged with supporting these businesses to elevate their quality, but also their infrastructure, so that it becomes more desirable to work at these firms. And when we dug a bit deeper and said, out of those companies that are social enterprises, it was even worse. It was closer to 80% of people not wanting to work for a social enterprise. And the responses was because they felt that those companies don't make money. So now, when we're in this space of social entrepreneurship and social enterprise and social finance, if the stereotype out there is that these types of businesses don't work and they're more charity type cases, we have a lot of work to do to change that dynamic, so people actually desire and are aspiring to work at a social enterprise instead of seeing it as a last resort. One thing that did come to mind, this is just an overview of the job openings that they're struggling to fill, where now it's not just entry level, because these companies want to scale and want to grow, but you'll see there's a catch-22 where it's difficult for them to find this type of talent that will help them grow. But then to get this talent, you need capital. So if you don't have the talent, you're between 1 to 2 employees, banks look at you at high risk. But if you got the capital, you'd be able to hire the staff that you need to be able to grow and reduce the risk. So we're seeing entrepreneurs are caught in that catch-22. One key finding that I did want to wrap up with is there's about 42 industries, and the Black community engages with about 26. But out of those 26, they're concentrated in only 4. And the biggest one is professional services. So you see 25% of businesses are in that industry, whether it be a lawyer, accountant, or a consultant. Also 19% are in the arts and entertainment. We're seeing 9% are in financial industries like insurance and finance and real estate. And another 9% are in computer system design and IT related services. So this brings us back to that capital question. If you're going into a bank and you are a professional service provider, you are the talent. So banks typically want to back their money against collateral. So since you're the talent, the collateral is you, it's very risky for a bank to back you when they would rather put the collateral as equipment or leasehold improvements. And what have, so we're in the wrong industry where the banks see you as high risk. We are not large because if you're the service, if you're the talent, you only usually put a couple service provider or service assistant supporting cast around you. So now, and then as the federal government admitted, there is systemic racism in the banking system. So 3 strikes, and this is what our Black entrepreneurs are facing, where we're structured wrong, we're not big enough, and we also are dealing with systemic barriers. It's a very tall task and a large mountain to climb. And this is where we have to start leaning into what is trending. And I don't want to call construction a trend because we're always building. The federal government invested $187 billion into infrastructure. The Ontario province wants to build at least 2.5 million homes over the next time. So, but we're seeing actually, sorry if I go back, that the construction industry, we are not engaged enough in that industry and in the trades. So one thing that I know ACBN is trying to do is partner more with organizations like ACA, which is the Afro-Caribbean Contractors Association, and also the Toronto Community Benefits Network, who have already been working in the construction industry and with the trades, so that we can encourage and support more business owners in the trades, more business owners to start construction companies, because that, if we engage with that industry, it'll really empower the Black community, and I would say amplify it. So one, I did have a request from the audience. As we continue the research, we're going to be doing community consultations, but we were tapped on the shoulder by the Minister of Labor to do a presentation for his office, Minister Seamus O'Regan. So I'm curious how to approach this type of presentation for the minister's office. And because again, I'm still new to that lobbying and advocacy game. So I'd love to learn from those that might have a bit more experience on how we can structure that type of presentation to amplify the work that we do. But again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And let me make sure I can stop sharing without blowing up everybody's mics again.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ryan, for sharing a lot of the really interesting findings that you've gleaned from the questionnaires and the focus groups that you've held so far. I think this work is super important, and it'll be really interesting to see what additional learnings will be obtained as the work progresses and maybe expands beyond Southern Ontario. So thank you so much. Okay, so it looks like we have about 5 minutes here. So thank you again to our speakers, Ryan and Tate, for sharing more about the important work that you're engaged in. At this time, we will go ahead and open up the floor to questions. So if you have any questions at all for Ryan or Tate, please feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat.
I think Rosa has her hand up. Rosa, feel free to unmute yourself.
First, I want to say congratulations to Tate and Ryan for the presentation. Two speakers are so extraordinary information that bring to us today. My question is for Ryan. We saw in the presentation about the statistics. He said that he's working with Afro-Caribbean business through the five years. I want only one clarification because I know the Afro-Caribbean is funder of IRP since December last year. And my question is, he showed us that among the 130,000 of Black entrepreneurs, only 27,300 are incorporated, are registered. This is one thing. And the second thing is 86% of employ on less than 5 people in their establishment. These 2 points are important for my question because for the IRP, we need to show that entrepreneurs or these enterprises needs to have a huge social and economic impact in the community. But speaking now, the 86% only have 5 people, employees in the establishment. And the second one, only 27,300 are registered. How is managing these 2 points when the IRP, for applying for the IRP, first, you need to be incorporated or registered. And second one, you need to show you have a huge impact, social, economic, and environmental in the community. I want to know
very
how
true.
they approach. Thank you.
You mentioned that we have to show the social impact. The issue is that we have to show the infrastructure because people that are unemployed, when they hear social enterprise, they think that it's unstructured. So we have to actually show, as people are starting social enterprises, they are, hey, maybe incorporation shows a bit more structure than not. But yeah, that's where the perception is out there that it's not as stable.
Ryan, seems like you heard, which is great. This is Sarah. Can people hear me? I didn't think so. Okay, good.
Yep.
I have a question for Tate. You mentioned how a pan-Indigenous approach in the North has been limiting or creating, additional barriers because there's so many diverse communities. And I think that's something that happens all the time with any kind of diversity work, where as soon as you're trying to work at scale, you homogenize or paint with one big brush. We hear about that in disability serving communities as well. I wonder, as you're learning about that really cool framework to put a construct under communities, but let them build their own, is there anything more you can say about that? How organizations can partner in a good way where we might be able to achieve scale, but don't do that big painting with a broad brush kind of problem that's happening? I think a lot of us that are trying to change our behavior around inclusion are trying to figure that out. So I thought that was a really interesting insight. I don't know if you have anything else to add to it. But so how do we avoid being pan-Indigenous when we work at a national scale or a large regional scale with so many different groups?
It's I mean that's the problem right now. That's a big one to solve, and I think that it's almost like that's a really big question that comes up a lot when you say, well, you need to go talk to the communities. Like through a lot of the IRP work and people following up with me, it's like, oh, I work in Ontario. How should I get in contact with this nation near me? Like, what should I do? And my answer usually is, in the words of Paul Andrew, who is an amazing elder, it's one who I speak to and listen to a lot more than I speak to, is he always says, I can only speak for myself as a Dene man. I can only speak for myself because I don't represent any other people other than myself and then the express words of those who have shared those with me. And to those people, I usually say, the outreach needs more capacity. Obviously, when you say like, well, you should reach out to everyone, it just sounds like a lot of work, right? But that's kind of it. Reconciliation is going to be hard work. I think that we need to start building frameworks and like start scaling outreach to that, right? I think that that's kind of the answer is that there isn't really a way to be flexible other than to, like I spoke about, right? Build those constructs. Common Approach has a really great framework, the flexible standard there, that I've looked a lot into there, and something that like I'm approaching in a lot of the reports that I've been reading. But it's, if you can build a foundation that advocates for the people you're serving, that says that you tell me what your measurements are, you tell me what impact looks like to you and your community, and I will work on showing that to the stakeholders, to the investors, right? And it's like there's a lot of work right now that's the top-down approach, which is we have to work for the stakeholders, we have to think about what is coming down from the top. But in reality, like when you're working in communities with disability, you're working with marginalized groups, and you're working with people who have challenged systemic issues and face those barriers, you have to kind of build a framework that says it's working for them. And if somebody's metrics are, I'm going to start getting more fish in my community so that people are eating healthier, or that, to me, I can immediately say you're taking that much processed food out of the community right there. That's a metric, right? You're bringing people out in the land with you to fish. That's a metric right there, right? You're increasing people's activity. You're putting people back into stewardship roles, right? And those are all things that I know from my work in growing up at Dene, but those are all measurements that I advocate for and fight for, because it's up to us to be the advocates for those who need us to advocate, and not the other way around. We shouldn't say, oh, well, that might fit into this. It says, no, like we have something that is full. We have a framework that's full, and we'll show you that basically what you do and who you are fulfills the obligations that these metrics that we've created now, I guess, are. If that answers your question there. But yeah, it's a challenging topic. I think it's very easy to say we have to do better. And the solutions are usually a bit trickier to find, right? That's the work that we're doing up here. And yeah, I'm really proud to be doing it, because it's coming back to the North after a long time. You start to realize that the change is possible, and that we're able to create these changes at this time now. And there's a lot of support behind it to do so.
Yeah, Tate, that answers it beautifully, I think. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, just looking at the chat here. Shall we do one more question if there are any?
Are there any questions? Rosa, did you want to share something?
Yes, my question is for Tate. It says very interesting, the presentation and all the approach that you use. You speak also the methodology paper that you are developing through this experience with the IRP. My question is more, how do you approach, or how you are working to ensure the sustainability of this business in the North, taking into consideration that the IRPs, each phase is 2 years? Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Rosa. I always like getting your questions. I think we've spoken quite a bit through the whole IRP process, and it's always good to see your face and hear your words. I think that really comes down to the work we're trying to do is achieving that, because a lot of the work we do with entrepreneurs and business owners in the North is as we work through IRP funding right now, and that's part of us being in the charitable world, and part of just what's accessible right now for us to be able to do this research and build our capacity. We're hoping to move the North away from, which I would call more government reliance, right? A lot of the ties in the three territories are to economic development and public dollars. And because we have a lot of strong self-government agreements and a lot of treaty rights up here, we have the ability to really like shape how we use our lands. And there's been a lot of pushback from Indigenous groups for good reason, that you know, a lot of private sector in the past has been at the expense of our traditional areas and our ability to steward our own lands now. So a big thing is, as we increase capability through EntrepreNorth's work, training people through our business program, through our ideation workshops going to communities, right? As you start teaching people more about how to conduct business responsibly and how to watch out for predatory practices, predatory loaning, predatory southern interests, and other people who, you know, look to take advantage of Indigenous people, as has been done for a long time. You start removing that reliance, right? A big thing is intergenerational trauma is going to require intergenerational healing. Our work is not going to be done in a year or 2 years. And it's more about creating a sustainable model of growth and a sustainable model of capacity, capability, and education in the North, so people can make their own choices when it comes to wanting to go into entrepreneurship or wanting to start a business that's reflective of their needs as Indigenous people.
All right, thanks so much, Tate and Rosa. So it looks like we're at time. So I just wanted to say again, thank you so much, Ryan and Tate, for just lending your time and expertise with us today and sharing more about the important work that you're engaged in and the findings that you've obtained to date. If there are any upcoming events or social media, etc., that you'd like to share so we can kind of stay in the loop with the work that you're doing or co-promote anything, feel free to drop in the chat or just let Startup Canada or CCEDNet know. With that, thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll have the recording up and available on the portal shortly. And stay tuned for info on our next Lunch and Learn. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Wishing you a lovely week ahead.
Thanks so much. Merci, Joe.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.